That's it. Now, stop the bleeding. Focus. Good. You succeeded. Mastering your breathing. It will open many doors for you. Now, it won't solve everything, but it will help. You will continue to grow stronger.
Just aligning with stuff that I already said, you feel me? You know, and you see that a lot of the raw channeling I was doing, you know, was very accurate. Whether it comes to the 2 videos I did, the one older video I did about the 12 movie specialists, and then the second video I did, not say second like it was a follow-up, but another video I did about the pentaprism, but it's basically like a mirror system that's in cameras. But the connection with movies and cameras with the zodiac signs, and no coincidence that, you know, when it comes to like our transitioning and the quote-unquote afterlife process, you know, and the whole judgment thing, it's also in essence like, you know, like replaying a movie. You know, it's no coincidence that, you know, you think of like your life flashing before your eyes. You know, that's almost like replaying the movie of your life. You feel me? Almost like doing a movie review. And hence why you could even see in this realm why we like movies so much. Or why movies, you know what I'm saying, is such a big thing. You know, because also movie theaters mimic the subconscious mind, or it mimics dreaming. You know, like in a dream where all you could see is just, you know, whatever it is that you see or experience. And I even say on a deeper level though, it's not necessarily just dreaming. I would say, you know, a movie theater would just mimic visualizations in your mind. Because technically, I feel like a dream could go a step further than that when we talk about lucid dreaming. So like you actually feel and see and sense yourself being in the dream. You know, so it's not necessarily like just looking at a screen in a dark room. So I wouldn't say that it's just like a dream per se, but, you know. But you see, also though, this connects with, so it connects with the 12 movie specialist video I did, the pentaprism video I did, and then also this raw channel, you know, like, cause in certain moments I'm like, damn, I was being so, you know, raw and straightforward about certain things. But I think of, it was a video, I don't know if it was just a psychedelics video, but it was basically a video where I was like, this realm or being on Earth is almost like the afterlife, you know? And again, because the fact that the present moment involves the past and the future, and that, you know, our vehicles are temporary, then in essence, you know, in every moment, you also quantumly experiencing, you know, an afterlife experience, just from the perspective of quantum physics and what the now moment represents, you feel me? You know, like, so if a person wanted to argue, like, you know, oh, no, that can't be, like, hey, look, you know, whether it's spirituality, quantum physics, you know, ancient ancestors, you know, multi-dimensional time travel, or quote-unquote space travel, you know, multi-dimensional travel, you know, it's about this now moment being able to access, you know, different dimensions, different timelines in this now moment. So just with that being said, to not even make it like a spooky thing, like, oh, you know, we're in the afterlife or in the underworld from a, you know, spooky, scary perspective, you know, and it's mostly spooky and scary because it's been taught to be, you know, spooky and scary, which of course, now keeping it real, yes, the underworld can have like, very morbid, or, should I say like, energies that can be, not so settling, or, not so welcoming, let's just say, in certain ways. But again, ultimately, just off of the fact that the now moment embodies the past, into infinity, and the future into infinity. So meaning like, we're accessing moments when we transition and we're born, and transition and we're born. We're accessing, just the eternal and infinite aspect of our being, just in general. But what I was going to point to, as I had to say all that, but the 12 deities without attributes, again, just pay attention to all the things that's connected to, when you see numbers, or it was the 9 this, or it was the 7 this, or the 12 that, it's certain things in mythology, I even say myth or cosmology, that across the board, no matter what culture, no matter what language, it all points to some of the same things. And in most cases, 12, it's going to be, the zodiac signs, or also, the tribes of Israel, or certain 12 groups of people, or, what I'm saying? But 12 deities without attributes, the justified, who are in the duat, and duat, is in essence like the duality. They are again blessed dead. So that's what I want to point to. Like, these 12 deities are considered in this book, they constantly referenced as the blessed dead. And just to give a quick, this is the Egyptian Book of Gates. And not to say that Carl Jung is the authority on a lot of these things, but, that just gives you an idea, because also Carl Jung, I ain't said this in a long time, but reference like how Carl Jung, had one of the Gnostic, like the Codex 1 or something like that, of the Nag Hammadi, Gnostic scriptures, So he sitting with that in his possession, and then, talking about all these different things, So there's some accuracy to it, and, the psychological / spiritual connections that, you notice, like if you ever read some of his work, like it's pretty accurate, when you tap in with your ancestors and look at certain spiritual journeys you've been on, it's like, all right, So even before, like, looking at some of his books and his works, it's like, the spiritual experiences I've had, and I remember reading the book by Carl Jung called A Man and His Symbols, and I'm like, damn, the way he explained the anima and animus seems exactly like experiences that I had with women, as far as like how the anima and animus, basically like the feminine or masculine aspects of the subconscious, and how men and women show up in each other's life according to the anima and animus of the subconscious. But, just to add that to it. But yeah, they are again the blessed dead who follow the laws of Ma'at on earth. So they follow the laws, these 12 deities called the blessed dead. And we use the word transition, or, as some may say now, unalive. But the blessed unalive, or the blessed beings who have transitioned, follow the laws of math, or Ma'at, on earth. And basically the mathematics of duality, within the earthly plane. Now, why it ain't the blessed living, if earth was, if the earth wasn't, in essence similar to an afterlife or the underworld, then why these ain't the blessed alive people? Why this ain't the blessed beings who they're so full of life? Like, why isn't it referenced in that way? You know. And of course, you gotta do your due diligence of researching across the board, because who's to say that the people who wrote this book, ain't trying to propaganda people into believing that these deities are dead and it's really false. You feel me? But for the most part, when publishing these types of books, and you don't hear too many people refuting it, and again, then you also have spiritual experiences that reflect, certain things, then, but those who have spoken Ma'at on earth, who have kept afar from doing wrong. But, you see that. Let me see, because they have some other parts where they, again, like these deities are called basically like the blessed dead. Let's see. Matter of fact, since we right here, also you see the jackal head, the ram head, placed in the desert mountain. And in some Sumerian texts, you look at the way the Sumerian texts reference mountains. Mountains also represent the afterlife or the underworld. And also Judy K. King, in her little lecture that I just recently referenced in connection with Jehudi or Thoth in the DNA and RNA, there was also a connection to mountains. She was showing some type of little, thing similar to a tourist field, but, connected to a mountain. But anyway, is a counterpart of the jackal here. See, again, these two kneeling gods right here. One who is, in essence, the netherworld, and the other one represents the desert. Desert, that's dry land. They point to why Arizona is so connected to, being like ancient Egypt, and there's certain things about the Grand Canyon and pyramids in Arizona. All right, here's the name of those kneeling gods. One name is Duat, or the netherworld, and the other one is Zimit. Or Zimit, the desert. All right, and here it go again. On a mountain range in the desert are 12 gods without attributes. They are called collectively gods of the Western Desert. And anytime talking about the West, you're talking about, where the sun, quote unquote, sets, and Set connected to the deity Set in the Kemetic pantheon is connected to the desert. And the west direction also connected to Venus and, you want to say Asian or Chinese medicine. When you talk about the Tao or the Tao, and how Venus is connected to the lungs, and the lungs connected to the western direction. So Venus, the lungs, that's all connected to the west. You feel me? And represents the blessed dead. So again, they are called collectively the gods of the Western Desert and represent the blessed dead. So, and as again, for awareness purposes, it's not to, once you kind of get deeper into things, you realize certain things gotta be wet in order for some things to be dry. some things gotta be low in order for some things to be high. Some things gotta be quote unquote dead in order for some things to be living. You know, when it comes to duality, you know. So it's no judgment, you know, it's almost like judging yin and yang. Hence why, you know, most Eastern medicine and principles, you know, they help to integrate more properly compared to like Christianity, where it's like, oh, these the devils and these are the, you know, these are the angels. So these the good ones, these the bad ones, you know, compared to like, you know, hey, there's yin and there's yang. You know what I'm saying? Like, one is extreme masculine, one is extreme feminine. Neither one better, you know. And that's also, you notice like in more ancient Vedic scripts, you know, even though they talk about the Asuras being like the quote unquote demons and the Devas being like the, you know, the gods upon high, even though they have like that subtle difference, they don't really preach or say that one is bad or good, because they actually give a lot of examples, you know, especially I did the video about it was a Live Now 31 video about the etymology of the word divine and astrology, but I brought up the story, I forgot the exact name of it, but the Vedic story of how the Asuras and the Devas had to churn the mountain, you know, and again, a mountain coming up in that again, you know, but they had to turn this mountain. They had two parts of a snake. One had the head of the snake and the tail, and they wrapped it around the mountain. And as they basically milked the mountain, you know, in essence, it pointed to like the creation of the quote unquote Milky Way. And, you know, you could check it out because I don't want to go too deep into it. You know, just check out the video Live Now 31 that I did, and you will see the connections. But, you know, but just simply wanted to add, you know, more clarity to why a lot of us, you know, again, this realm is about, you know, your experience and being present and all that, but also why a lot of us are like, you know, but keep your head on the swivel and don't get lost in too many distractions, because, you know, this is where we're at. You know, we're in some type of realm that, you know, in essence is similar to, you know, an afterlife type of experience, you know. And, you know, when you think of it like that, it's like, you know, again, you want that balance of, you don't want to be fearful and like all the time scared in that type of experience, but you also don't want to, you know, do anything too foolish, you know what I'm saying, in that experience either. So, you know, want to stay aware, you feel me? But that's it. Just want to share that part. And this will also link to, you know, the video it's really on my Patreon page. Basically, it was a vlog video from the gym show, but I did a snippet, and just the snippet alone should give, you know what I'm saying, if you just research and check into what I put on the snippet, is a snippet video, it should show up as a short on YouTube. But just on that, you know, I showed the matrix, you know, and the connection with crystals, and how, you know, the earth, you know, holds the memory, the DNA, you know, making those connections. But now is the vibrate right now. All those dimensions, you know, right now. But peace.
I say that if we understood this, we would profoundly, profoundly understand the nature of death, the nature of lucid dreaming, and the way through. Literally, exactly. For example, obviously it's well known that at the moment of death, you got to see your whole life in the 1-2 seconds just before death. That's called compression. Now, obviously, your body's plasma field and DNA ain't stupid. At the moment of death, it has to do compression for a reason. What is the reason you got to do compression good or you ain't dying well? It's practical, it's simple. This is electrical engineering 101, man. All right. So, first we're going to get back to the basics and then we're going to understand the physics of death and dreaming based simply on successful compression of spin. So you all know we've talked about this. This is from the conference we just did in Spain. It was great fun. And we talked about the fact that the birth canal has actually the shape of the centric waveform for love, because here's the way you touch someone to say I love you, the change in pressure over time reaches max pressure at golden ratio. So obviously the birth canal is essential to successful birth, because there would be implosion in the geometry of the birth canal's max pressure reaching 0.618, add 0.618 into the duration of the birth canal, so that you can implode in that birth canal, and that's called the bliss of birth. But it's more than the bliss of birth. It is the physics of all bonding. That's Joseph Chilton's first famous book, Bond of Power, that Caesar couldn't bond with his mother, with his land, or couldn't bond with the Druids. In other words, he had no compassion, no feeling, because he got no birth canal. It's very simple. The birth canal is the fusion point that enables all bonding. So this business of the Caesar's section about this in Spain, we had great fun. And that the fact that the sperm is delivering a certain voltage that causes the zygote, the egg, to dimple and then turn inside out in 7 steps called the 7 stages of invagination. And that implosion is called fertilization. So literally, it's recursive turning inside out that enables birth, and we are going to see also death. So, and to visualize that recursive turning out, we have inside out, we have lots of slides. The physics of that implosion, when the turning inside out becomes implosively recursive, then you have also, for example, the centripetal force, when that implosion that holds things together, the reason objects fall to the ground, the cause of gravity, is that charge collapse implosion, planckfire.com. And it is the reason compassion exists. You're literally, here's the technical map of the arrival of the voltage that causes your heart to fire. So you can answer your 5-year-old when she asks, what causes my heart to beat, Mommy? Well, here's the answer. It is literally your heart is turning inside out, and that implosion then sucks the outside into the inside, called compassion, feeling the outside as if it were within. So that principle of recursive implosion, we applied that to DNA, and you know the whole story, and that leads to the Grail, and that leads to the physics of planckfire.com. That charge collapse implosion is the reason gravity exists, zero-point energy. The reason love exists. It's the reason all the entropy, life force, seed germination. And then we had that conversation that restored compression is electrically the opposite of pain. So that's just a review of things we've talked about many times in many seminars. Now, to focus precisely on the subject of this conversation, which is using our new insight about the physics of compassion, the physics of the compression of spin named time, to understand in practical, everyday, you can do it yourself kind of terms, how to do dreaming and death successfully.
So, from the first video in the Dan Winters clip, but mainly, tying it into the video I done on the 12 movie specialists and the other video I done on pentaprisms, and seeing how all of this connects. And again, through researching the etymology, researching the metaphysics of it, researching the science connected to, our torus field and heart coherence, again, like a lot of the stuff that Dan Winter's been bringing up throughout the years. And just that disclaimer before even going any further in connection with the Dan Winters clip, and with any of the science, of course, you don't want to, box yourself in to, certain sciences, or even certain religious scriptures and things of this nature, you should always be aware of yourself, your intuition, your gifts and abilities, because I'm a firm believer in, the fact that some of us may have gifts and abilities or things that, may quote unquote defy certain, the science say it's supposed to be like this. Some of us may have abilities and gifts that may, transcend those things. And with that being said, like, I deleted it out, you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't even want it to be like the way he said it. I was like, I don't want that in the video. But, like, say for instance, like we're passing through the birth canal and he expressed like, oh, it's a problem if you don't. In which I do feel that much, like where it is healthy to pass through the birth canal. But again, you could be the type of being that has gifts and abilities that could make up for not passing through the birth canal. But I definitely feel like just off of just knowing that, there's so much science into when we talk about the physics of certain things, because electromagnetic physics, you got thermodynamics, electric engineering, like these are certain sciences that in essence connect to certain metaphysical aspects on some law of correspondence, like, or should I say like where, thermodynamics, electrical engineering, electromagnetic physics could explain certain quote unquote mythological stories, or cosmological stories. Kind of like the reference to Judy K. King video breaking down how RNA and DNA's behavior, operates and does things in a manner like the story of Thoth, you know what I'm saying? So the mythology of Thoth in essence is connected to the way RNA operates. So you see like a science and a mythological connection. And you see again, like how I always say, anatomy is mythology by law, or anatomy is cosmology by law. Because again, the word myth implies that it's some type of like, oh, it's a myth. It's a, you know what I'm saying? It's something that's not true, So when I say mythology, I don't mean like it's necessarily a myth, but just again going along with the quote that I first started. But again, you're not doomed if you didn't pass through the birth canal, but it does have some, scientific significance, and also, so we're gonna get into the film aspect and just drawing that connection, because all I really just wanted to do was just to show this connection. And you see like right here, like two wheels of film, and basically how that almost looks like a torch field, but basically like imagining again, like when they say, for one, like where I connected like wearing your life experience, aka the skin or film of your subtle body, aura, or torus field, because your life experiences in essence, is embodied in your subtle body, like there's certain things that happen in your chakras, and no coincidence, the chakras are wheels as well, but you have certain experiences that happen to you and it's encoded within your subtle body. Hence why, again, like certain clairvoyant people, could read these things and see these things about you. In essence, could like psychically watch your movie, just from being within, your quote unquote skin, or being within your film, or being within your subtle body, or your aura, or your torus field. You feel me? So you see that connection there. So with the light flashing before your eyes, also like I depicted, like, just the head of somebody with the little viewpoint, and imagine like, all right, this your torus field, you know, and the film, like you watching your life flash before your eyes, like, you know what I'm saying? You watching your subtle body, you're watching your torus field, you're watching this film. And again, from the etymology of it, you know, the film is like a skin. And so your subtle body skin is your torus field, it is your aura, you know. So you're watching the film of your life flash before your eyes, you feel me? And in connection with Dan Winters bringing up how, you know, when you transition, basically it's connected to the compression of your energy field. And compress equals, or should I say, is defined by, you know, being expression that's in a shorter form, or it's flattening by pressure, or to press something, because that's, you know, main aspect of the word, you know, is to press, to pressurize something, you know. But in this case, expressed in shorter form. So compression, expressing something in shorter form, you compress a 1 hour video into 1 minute, or you compress a whole lifetime into flashing before your eyes in just a minute. So you see the compression also connecting to, you know, the whole life flashing before your eyes thing, and again, watching a film, and also connecting again to certain, you could say, mythological aspects of like having almost like a life review. In essence, it's like watching a film of your life. And this was also depicted on the movie, what's the name of it? And I did a video referencing this movie, Along with the Gods, if I'm not mistaken. It was a Asian movie, but basically it was a depiction of transitioning through, you know, the quote unquote afterlife, and the guy was going through different realms, and each realm had a different form of life review, you know, where certain parts of his life was replayed, or like rewatching this film, you know what I'm saying? What's funny is, like, no coincidence, like we're playing sports, you know what I'm saying, before your next game, before you transition into the next world, you know what I'm saying, like watching film, you know what I'm saying? Anybody familiar with sports, you know, especially football or basketball, you know, you watch the film and be like, oh damn, when I did that layup and it got blocked, I should have went with my left hand. You know what I'm saying? When I did this to my son, you know, I should have taught him how to do it this way, you know. And that goes back again also to what I expressed from my own personal experience of feeling like, all right, in essence, it would have been myself judging myself, you know, from the transition standpoint. And more so, like, again, like your heart being light as a feather from the perspective of, you know, living your life in a manner where, for one, you know, you eliminate as many regrets as possible, and then also just having the mind frame to not have regrets regardless. You know, that's easier said than done in some cases, but, you know, it's like, you know, like knowing to not trip on yourself or not judge yourself too harshly for quote unquote mistakes, you know. So, you know, ultimately having your heart weigh light as a feather. So lastly though, you know, just remembering to take care of the memory and the dream and astral health and hygiene. And why that's such a big thing, you know, with, you know, when we talk about, you could say immortality, and just in general, not being a quote unquote lost soul, because for the most part, being a quote unquote lost soul, or how that's even created, in most cases, it's like when somebody transitions abruptly to where they don't even know what happened to them. Again, the whole Sixth Sense archetype, with Bruce Willis character, like something happened and he didn't even know he was a ghost, and there's a lot of souls, a lot of people, a lot of beings that transition in that type of manner where they don't even have, they didn't take their memory through that. Otherwise, like again, you wouldn't be lost if you remember. Like even as just a person or being in general on your spiritual growth, when you're not aware of yourself, or if you don't have memory of who you are in this moment, and you don't have memory of, in essence, you could say your ancestors and / your quote unquote past lives. If you don't have memory of ancestor memory, or should I say again, quote unquote past life memory, then you kind of be, in essence, kind of lost. Well, the memory is the key to that. Also with dreams, you know what I'm saying? Like, because in so many ways, your dreams and astral, again, this is not to say to completely discredit the physical experience. It's just the fact that the astral and dream experience is like, in essence, more of a truer aspect of what's being created in the physical. You know what I'm saying? The physical is like the last slow stage. And think about it like that, like the physical aspect is moving, slower than what's happening on the dream and astral body. The astral body and then the dream realm moves quicker. So just by the strength of that, it could be seen. It wouldn't be far-fetched to think that what's happening physically is happening after something that's happening astrally or on the dream level, just off of the sheer science of, again, this is a slower moving, heavier, denser experience compared to, your dreams and astral body. And no coincidence that when it comes to premonitions, and quote unquote seeing the future, in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, some people have premonitions through their dreams or visions, on the astral level, what I'm saying, seeing things before it physically happens, what I'm saying, in the material realm. So another way you could see that this realm, in essence, is secondary to what happens on this level. So, dream and astral health and memory health, and basically, again, like doing any and all things that helps for you to get better rest, not eating late at night, making sure that you do eat healthy in alignment with what's best or healthiest for you. Of course, for all of us, finding an alkaline acid balance, that's healthy for us. Tapping in with the alkaline whenever, we're trying to prevent a too acidic type of, environment, and tapping in with the acidic whenever we're trying to prevent a too extreme alkaline environment. But for everybody, you got to know yourself and know what's best for you in that situation. But anyway, so you see, again, like what's constantly brought up is like a lot of connections with dreams and memory. And the cool thing about it, and that's why I always tell people, you could tell the truths, or at least at the least a collective agreement, you know what I'm saying? But you could tell the truths are possible collective agreements, but nonetheless, you could tell the truths within the realm by the fact of people from all different types of walks of life, spiritual practices, like all of this type of shit, you know what I'm saying, white, black, orange, European, Mexican, Antarctican, you know what I'm saying? Like, no matter what walk of life, you know, when all of their knowledge and cultures and all this point to these things, you know what I'm saying? Toltec with the dreaming signs, Tibetan with the dreaming signs, you know what I'm saying? Like, because also like with meditation, I feel like helps my memory a lot, you know, like, and it in essence prevents you from, one of the ways, I ain't gonna say it's the only thing, but meditation definitely prevents you from, you know, completely being possessed by, you know, certain entities and spirits, you know, due to you kind of, again, meditation kind of slows things down, so you could say slow, but, you know, it allows for you to be more observant, you know, and see what's really going on internally, see what's going on in your mental body or with your thoughts, or in your emotional body with your emotions. Like it gives you that, you know, because there been moments where like I done had a little drink and somebody that stuck with me, where somebody had brought up about, like, you know, when drinking alcohol or drinking the spirits, it was like, you know, you were possibly possessed if you can't remember. If you can't remember what happened when you was quote unquote drinking, then you may have been, you know, possessed by, you know, and not to make it super spooky, but, you know, because you could be possessed by your pain body, you know, and to keep that in a perspective of, you know, your pain body, in essence, is something that you created in so many ways. You know what I'm saying? It's what you created also from, you could think about it also from an ancestral karmic level, you know what I'm saying? Because what you're going through, in essence, may be a part of quote unquote ancestral, you know, karma, ancestral quote unquote curses, things of this nature. But, you know, again, it's like that memory, you know, is a sign that, you know, you're not possessed when it comes to the example as I'm bringing up, like with drinking. But again, seeing that importance with memory of your dreams, because if you're not remembering what's going on in a space that actually, in essence, helps to, you know, not say helps, but, you know, in a lot of cases dictating what goes on in this realm, you know what I'm saying, then, you know, it may not be the healthiest thing, you know, and that's why for me I took it, you know, more serious to basically just, you could say, shape my life, or what's the word for it, you know, to cultivate, to shape, to make sure that my experience caters to the health of my memory and my dream / astral body, you know, and health, you know, so you see the connection with, you know, the health on that level. Because that also speaks to, you know, when we think about karmic energies and stuff like that, again, all regular health problems is connected to something on a spiritual level, and, you know, again, be tied to certain karmas, in the sense of, like, I thought of like Alzheimer's and dementia, but like basically like somebody having Alzheimer's where they don't remember things, you know, that could be like, again, that's a family ancestral thing, but then that's also connected to something spiritual, like you're not having memory of things because maybe you wasn't keeping up with the memory of yourself as a soul, you know what I'm saying, or you're getting your ancestors, but in essence that's, you know, you in this moment as well, you know, wasn't keeping up with the memory of things, so end up suffering from quote unquote Alzheimer's, you know, or due to letting a certain, you know what I'm saying, antagonizing spirit keep affecting your ability to remember things, you know what I'm saying? But you see how that's important. And again, just simply bringing it full circle, quite literally, you know, your life flashing before your eyes, so you see how, again, this movie 12 movie specialists, the pentaprism video, the videos I done expressed with my own experience of like having a transition, like, you know, unaliving experience. You know, experience that felt like I unalived myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, basically seeing all those little connections of watching film or like a film review, and then looking at importantly too, looking at the etymology of it and the metaphysics of it, but the etymology of the word film. And that's, again, in a lot of cases, like, that's what I'll do. Like, any word that come to me, I'm like, man, let me look up the etymology. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll sit there, you know, it'll be little random stuff. Because, matter of fact, to bring this up, you know, while I'm here, matter of fact, while I'm here in Arizona, also, you know, I would they have like a lot of little sayings in Tucson. I don't know if it's just a Tucson thing or Arizona thing, but it's little signs that always say, be kind. And I'm like, I'm like, all right, you know, when I think about terraforming, you know, or spiritual terraforming, or spirits terraforming, or terraforming for certain spirits to embody a certain environment, whether that be, again, the earth environment or your body as an environment, you know. But I'm like, all right, if this is a constant message I'm seeing every different little place I go, there's a spirit or energy behind this. So let me go look at what's the etymology of the word kind. You feel me? In a lot of cases, it would point to like kin, you know, because even when you think of like mankind or mankin, but a kind, you know, like it's a certain kind of candy, you know, or a certain kind of dog, you know, but like a kinship, like a kind, you know. But I'm like, all right, be kind in so many words. It's like, all right, the energy, in essence, you know, looking at the etymology of it would speak to, you know, be kin, like, you know, like be like a kinfolk, be like family, you know. And of course, there's deeper other aspects to it, you know, but just on a simple level, you know, it's like be kin. But just, you know, sharing that on the aspect of etymology, and, you know, how it could, again, go past the middleman type of energy. What, even, again, like I always said throughout the years, you know, I share things in a manner where you don't even have to keep watching the videos that I put out. You feel me? Like, you know, because I'm not trying to be your middleman. That's why I explain things in a manner that exposes truth and that expose different practices or different knowledge that helps you to be able to do this studying or know on your own. You feel me? And put things together on your own, you know. So, but that's simply it. You know what I'm saying? Again, the film, being in your tourist field, watching the film or the skin of your tourist field, you know what I'm saying? The whole aspect of compression. And again, you know, you check out other stuff that Dan Winters dropped, you know, to see different little sciences. Because again, that's where like the whole constructive wave interference, matter of fact, as I'm wearing the ammonite ring, ammonite, but basically like the shells, you know, seashells that have like the spiral in it, you know, that also connects to the phi ratio. And the phi ratio, when the torus field, you know, when the waves and the energy in the torus field are moving at the phi ratio, then that causes constructive wave interference, meaning when the waves come, again, just as an example, while we're here, you know, like constructive wave interference, when these two waves meet each other, you know, instead of zeroing out or flatlining, they actually keep the wave going. while destructive wave interference would be the waves moving in a sporadic or, in a manner that's not aligned with the phi ratio that will cause like a quote unquote flat line, for the waves to kind of cancel each other out. And again, that speaks for itself, flat line as we're talking about transitioning, So, doing different things to promote, again, that health of the auric field, to promote that constructive wave interference. As I'm wearing opal, that's another crystal that's, the Walo Ethiopian opals to be specific, but opals in general, said to have that promote constructive wave interference within the energy field. But again, it's not just one thing. You got to make sure that you're aware of yourself and aware to be more compassionate. Not letting no stubborn, hateful energies to take over, overcome. Like no grudge holding. You gotta take care of things with certain actions. For yourself. So it's not just, let me just wear an opal ring and an amylite, or what I'm saying, let me just take ginkgo biloba and everything will be okay, what I'm saying, let me just go to sleep early, that all helps, what I'm saying, going to sleep at a certain amount of time, not eating late, taking things to promote your memory, doing all those different things are parts of the puzzle that help, but it's not just one of those things that just take care of everything. Hence why, again, it takes that discipline, to, in essence, being a disciple, but takes that discipline to, maintain this health, across the board. That's simply it. How's the vibrate? Y'all know what it is.